For more on this, we can bring in Sharath Srinivasan, Director of the Centre of Governance and Human Rights at Cambridge University. Good morning, Sharath. 14 months on from the start of the Sudanese civil war, we've had more than 14,000 people killed and 10 million displaced. But what is the state of play in the conflict itself right now?
Well, the conflict has reached a stage where both sides believe they can win, and that has proved to be, a deadlock in the war, but a stranglehold on the civilian population. So the Sudan Armed Forces controls most of the territory east of the Nile in the country. It's the UN-recognized government of Sudan, whereas the paramilitary RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, controls whole swathes of the country to the west, especially in Darfur, but also some key agricultural breadbaskets in the center of the country. Both of them have ample supply of arms and believe that they will prevail, and that's proving to be an absolutely deadly situation.
And this UN draft security resolution, should it actually be implemented, is it likely to have any effect at all? Because there's certainly been no let-up in the past few days.
There is no let-up, and the situation in Darfur around El Fasher, which is the regional capital, which is home to a large millions of displaced people, is really, really dire. I mean, just to put into perspective that when we say that this is the world's largest famine crisis or risk of famine for 40 years, we're talking over 18 million people acutely hungry, and millions of children at risk of acute malnutrition. El Fasher and Darfur is the worst of this. The issue here is that both of the armed groups have little regard for the civilian population in El Fasher. So for the RSF, from the point of view of its kind of campaign, the ethnic targeting of populations means that the siege of El Fasher is part of the logic of its conflict. For the Sudan Armed Forces, ensuring that the RSF is squeezed in terms of access of aid and reaching areas under its control is also part of its logic. So it's not clear that any UN resolution really without strong leverage from outside is going to have much effect, and that's very concerning.
And is there actually any way at all of getting aid through while this conflict is still underway?
Well, yes, this is the situation that is worrying. We've had a very large call for assistance. There was a summit in Paris a couple of months ago. Large amounts of funding were promised for aid delivery, but getting aid through is the real problem. And there are a couple of crossings from Chad. As I said, you said the Adre crossing, which is critical, but that goes through RSF territory. The Sudan Armed Forces is unwilling to allow that to be opened effectively. The land crossing into El Fasher is now not possible from Sudan Armed Forces controlled territory. So it is a situation where the military actors are fundamentally restricting aid access, and the only way for that to change is a heavy level of leverage and influence over them. And that influence largely lies not in the UN Security Council, but really in regional actors in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, both of them critical in terms of supporting one side or the other. And that's where probably the most leverage lies.
And is there a sense that Sudan is being overshadowed by conflicts elsewhere, most notably Gaza, and forgotten by the world?
I mean, absolutely. There's absolutely no doubt about this. We live in a world in turmoil. There's no doubt in Ukraine, in Gaza, other places. Of course, also just elections and upheaval in our domestic politics. But take these numbers as with a sober view, and that is that some estimates of up to 5% of the Sudanese population, 2.5 million people, are at risk of death this year, according to some estimates. Now, those are probably the worst case scenarios, but there is no doubt that there is high risk of famine. And there's also no doubt that it'll be very politically unpalatable for the Sudanese government to allow for famine to be declared, which it has considerable control over. So we may not know until it's far too late the extent of this catastrophe. And yet it is very, very hard to get serious political attention onto the crisis at the level it's needed.
And one last question. Is there a danger of the conflict spilling over into other countries in the region?
There is a danger. I mean, as the conflict has gone on, there's no doubt that a number of regional actors are heavily involved. As I mentioned, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Russia both looking to get naval access to the port of Sudan, but also the Wagner group supporting the RSF. Iran, Turkey, other countries are closely involved. So there's definitely a lot of geopolitics involved here, and that is very concerning. The spillover risks are there, and they're probably most of a concern around Chad and Libya, so on the west of the country and the Darfur side. At the moment, though, the utmost priority, the utmost concern should be the civilian population and the risk of famine. I mean, this could be a catastrophe that will, haunt the region, but also the world for many, many decades to come. And it is man-made in the end.
Thank you very much for that, Sharath Srinivasan of the Centre of Governance and Human Rights at Cambridge University.